The cool cars in here. So what we have here is a real time capsule that has been off the road about 4 decades. This is what barn find hunting is all about. It's been a long time since we've actually been on the road, and we're in North Carolina. And actually I met this gentleman 35 years ago when he was just out of college, and we happened to connect again through a mutual friend. This is Gray, and Gray inherited some cars from his father. And so the cars, you're kind of the babysitter for these cars.
I inherited them and I get to find other homes for them.
This episode has a couple of special guests I'm going to bring in now. Brian Cotter, who you've met before, my son. He's here maybe to buy a Pantera today, which is pretty cool. And another guest who you know from watching these episodes, David from Redline Rebuilds.
Got my work done.
So
David, field trip now.
David traveled from Traverse City, Michigan down here to see mechanically what shape this car is in. It's been sitting for, I figure, 40 years. And to see, can we get the thing fired up? And also, another guy you know from past episodes, Keith Irwin, who's become somewhat of a Pantera expert in this part of the country, and he just happens to own a flatbed. So we said, Keith, what are you doing this morning? So he's coming along as well. So we got a whole bunch of stuff going on at one time. That's just a bunch of uninteresting cars. You wouldn't be interested in those at all. No, seriously, we'll talk about those cars later. The cool cars in here.
It's kind of tight.
Sweet.
So what we have here is a real time capsule. This is what barn find hunting is all about, is stumbling across something like this in your lifetime. This is a 1972 Pantera, the second year of the Pantera, that has been off the road, and Gray and I figure about 4 decades. You can see there's prints on here, probably from raccoons or something, you think? Raccoons and maybe cats or squirrels or something like that. But we're gonna walk around this car and explore it a little bit. Keith, who knows his way around a Pantera, is gonna slide underneath there and take a look at some of the areas that are of concern on Panteras. If everything works out, we're gonna take the car through that wall in just another couple hours. So I hope you enjoy this.
So we're gonna crawl underneath this thing and kind of see what we can get into, and hopefully we won't find no critters under there. Let's see what we got. It's got this normal little den under the front where most people ran over parking islands. Cooling tubes that got some rust in it, but that's normal. Under the hood looks good. They usually rot out there. That looks in really good shape. Wow, it's in really good shape. All right, let's go to the middle and see what we can find. Yeah.
When I met Keith, he was skinny enough to go all the way underneath the car. I'm not sure he can do that anymore.
We can push him.
Well, it's in good shape all the way around, looks like. Like I said, the cooling tubes are pretty rough, but other than that, that's pretty simple stuff there to fix. All the exhaust it's still got the stamped steel headers on it, which is really cool.
Apparently, the headers and the exhaust were developed specifically for DeTomaso. They didn't want it to sound like a Mustang. They didn't want it to sound like anything else on the road. They wanted it to have an Italian exhaust note.
Not a lot of rot in it. It's just a time capsule, Tom, is what it is. It really is. Wow. You know, the normal brakes and hydraulics and things like that, we'll need all that and the coolant stuff. But other than that, the body in this thing's in really good shape. I see it come with a factory hood prop. But,
that's the performance one.
You know it, lightweight wood. Yeah, I think we're really cool. Let's look at the inside and see what we got. A lot of times the people who worked on these cars would pull the rear hatch off and they would lay on the roof and work on the car. So a lot of these cars that we fixed over time, there's body prints on the roof. This one doesn't have it. It's in really still flat. All right, let's see. Oh, cool. Boy, you don't see any of those. An old 8-track player. Even the seats in it are still soft. Tom, even the headliner in this car is good. Look at that.
Check the mileage on there.
Oh, let's see what we got. It shows 45,693. The tripometer has 45 miles on it.
Wow. That means it almost has a full tank of gas
It
left.
should be fine. Yep, all the gauges are still in it. Wow, what an amazing find.
So you give a thumbs up?
I'll give it a thumbs up.
Today's sponsor is Consumer Cellular. They've reached out to us because they dig barn finds, but they also dig barn find people like you. They know the money that you save each month on your cellular plan, you could invest in your barn find. New wheels, tires, rebuild that motor. It's a no-brainer. So to save money for your next project car, check out the link in the description below. The deal is, this car's on wheelie dollies. The wheels might be locked up, we're not sure. This is a movable wall. We're gonna open it up. There's a couple of cars that have to be moved outside of here, and then we're gonna back the flatbed up to the garage door and take it away. So you're gonna watch us get dirty and
Give me back garage space.
give you back garage space. Okay.
All right, so we got to move the shelf, I guess. This guy actually, David Vizard, he was a mini expert. He used to build like the best A-series British engines for midgets, minis. It's pretty cool. That's one out of the way. Now we've got to move the red Sunbeam, and I think we might have enough access to get the Pantera out.
This way is quite impressive, that will be out. Spin the front end around. Well, maybe if we all tried to lift.
Oh, I think this might work, right?
That's what the front of the car looks like.
I hadn't seen the front of the car until just now.
Who wants to steer this thing? Brian, you should be the steerer. It's your car.
How do you steer a dolly?
Brian, you got to make the engine noises.
Oh, it works. Look at this.
Wow.
So this is the side we haven't seen. I've never seen this side. So I see it's got a little bit of rust here. It looked like the door might have been kinked at one time. So this probably needs to be ground and feathered in with paint. But otherwise, I mean, it looks pretty good, pretty darn good.
This is so cool. Tire's seen some better days.
There you go.
Oh, wow, look at that.
You
Okay.
spray out here a little bit.
Spray out there.
There you go. Let's see what we got. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice
job.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah, buddy.
Now it's shut forever.
There we go. Got it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Works. Yeah. Just need a little jiggling. All right. Are we ready to back it in? I don't want it to flip up and hit.
Stand on it. Stand on it so it doesn't flip up. There you go. Brian, you're
is
out.
that
Yeah,
rolling?
roll it out now.
They're rolling.
It's rolling.
Front's rolling.
They're
That's
all
how it
rolling. Yes, sir.
is. Then just do the same thing on the rear. Yeah. All right, right there. Stand on the back of that, Tom.
They're rolling.
Yep.
Almost took my leg off.
We're on and rolling. I am. I thought I'd take a nap.
Yeah. Congratulations. You got a good car.
The wheels rolled. We were concerned about the brakes being locked up, but they rolled. It rolled right onto the flatbed. We're gonna bring it back to the shop and start working on it. But on the way there, lunch, and then a car wash to squirt 4 decades worth of dust off this car.
I guess we should get it over to the shop and see if we can get it running next. It's great progress.
So do we want to raise it high enough for Keith or high enough for me?
Yeah, a lot of times these things are rotted out right there. That's in pretty daggone, like, good shape. There's a jack point right, somebody's jacked it up on the floorboard like normal. That's about, pull the seats out and jump up and down on it. See, this strip, all this is in really good shape. All these drains usually rot out right here. See, the bottom of the doors aren't rotted out or anything. Well, it's in really good shape for where it's been sitting.
So usually on Barn Find Hunter, as you know, we're groveling around in an old, dirt floor garage or something, trying to imagine what the underside of the car looks like. Here's an opportunity we have to bring it into a clean shop, squeaky floors, and get it up in the air and find out that the car is actually probably better than even Keith imagined it. The floors are solid, the rocker panels are solid. A lot of the key areas where these cars had problems with cancer, rust, they're still solid. So as David pointed out, which should have been obvious to me, but it wasn't, last inspected 76, 77. So let's just say last time this was driven regularly was 1977. 4 or 5 years worth of driving only, then it was parked. It's a 72, so until 77, that's 5 years. So probably most of the parts on here that would normally have been changed had this car been driven more than 40, I think it's 47,000 miles. The shocks are probably original. Maybe the brake pads are original. Maybe certainly the springs are original. Probably a lot of the things that would have been replaced with aftermarket parts over time are original still. I think that's what would make this a time capsule. So all it needs is to spend some time and money on maintenance items. Things like ball joints, tie rod ends, upper and lower control arm bushings, sway bar bushings, all the rubber pieces. And then, of course, look at things like brake lines. It's a rubber brake line, yeah. So rubber brake lines, probably all the hydraulics. I think the thing to do, what Keith recommended, is to do maybe a swap for Willwood brakes, 4 calipers and master cylinder, and just put all new hydraulics in there. We passed by some other cars on the way to this car in the garage, and I said, don't worry about those cars. We'll get to those later. Well, now is later. We're going to go back and look at the cars that we walked past on the way to the Pantera. So yesterday, I took a left turn and went into that building here. Today, we're going to spend time in this room. So tell us what we have here.
Pretty much you've got 3 Sunbeam Tigers.
Can you tell us about Sunbeam Tigers? Do you know about them?
I know, other than they collect a lot of dust, but these were Dad's, I wouldn't say pride and joy, but he collected them. The red one over here, every time he walked by it, he had to tap the back end. He called it his girl. And that was whether he was coming in or going out. That was the thing he did every time he walked by the car.
Did he drive that or any of these on the street every
I
day?
think he drove the red one.
Okay.
Like I said, they've been sitting, they were at the original shop for years, and then we moved them down here when they sold the business.
Yeah.
And it was just between the Panteras, the Lotuses, he collected all the unusual cars, not your typical Mustangs and all the rest of that.
Right. I'll get into a little bit of Sunbeam Tiger history as we go through these cars here. What we're going to do is move this stuff around. The cars are on dollies, so we can get between them and have a good look at them.
Hey, if you like what you're watching, do me a favor. Go check out the Hagerty Drivers Club. 24/7 roadside assistance with flatbed towing, subscription to our award-winning magazine, and more. Sign up today. Links right down here in the description.
Okay, that's perfect. Super. So a Sunbeam Tiger has been called a poor man's Cobra. I can tell you that in some ways it's not as good as a Cobra. They had 2-barrel carburetors on a Ford V8, not a 4-barrel. I think Carroll Shelby didn't want them quite to be as good as a Cobra because it was there were a lot of things that this car was better than a Cobra, such as it has roll-up windows. Now this car is filled with convertible tops and stuff, but it's got roll-up windows. Cobras don't have roll-up windows. They have side curtains that have to snap in. The car has a real dashboard, not just a piece of leather-covered metal, but it's got a crash pad in there. It has door panels. It's got coach work. Cobras never had that. Cobras have a hollow emptiness in the door here, and the only thickness is a piece of aluminum that has a piece of carpet inside it. So a Cobra is really a buckboard. This is a coach-built car, and it's far superior to a Cobra as far as driving is concerned. But a Cobra is a better race car, a better high-performance car. These cars can be turned into race cars. Problem being that they had a real short wheelbase, and they had such a weight distribution that they spun easily. So in a road race, you know, I talked to guys that have raced these back in the day in the 60s and 70s, they spun out too easily. And so unless you were a driver prepared to handle that, or you could set your car up accordingly, it was a car that, you know, you probably wouldn't win a race very often with, because you'd spin out somewhere. So several generations of Tigers. Now I should know more about Tigers than I do. I've owned 4 of them. I bought one from an original owner, so buying a one-owner Tiger was kind of cool. Series 1, Series 1.5, Series 2, there were some changes slightly in the body, slightly in the engine. But let's take a look at some of the things that are very obvious. Here it says powered by Ford 260. A 260 was the second generation small block Ford engine. So very few were built, but the first one was called a 221 cubic inch. It was called a narrow wall V8, a 221. A 260 was the second generation. It only lasted a little while before the 289 come out. The 260 motor was put into the Tiger with a 2-barrel carburetor, and it was not a high-performance engine. It was just a nice V8 in a small car. If you look here, it says Sunbeam V8. Now, why did they do that? Well, the Roots Group that built these cars and other cars in England was bought by Chrysler Corporation. Well, you couldn't very well sell a Chrysler product that said powered by Ford 260, so they put on here Sunbeam V8. Well, it wasn't a Sunbeam V8, it was a Ford V8 that Chrysler was selling. And actually the last generation Tiger had a Chrysler Pentastar right down here on the bottom of the fender. They tried putting a small Chrysler motor in there, 273, but I think the length or the width or something didn't allow them to make that transition. So sadly, the Tiger, even though it had a good audience of customers, was just killed because Chrysler Corporation said, we're not going to sell a Ford-powered car. And that was the end of the story. So it was kind of sad. So you can see that this engine compartment is quite filled up. It was made for a 4-cylinder motor. Well, this is still 4 cylinders in length, but it's times 2. It's a V8. It's 2 4-cylinders. So the length is fine, but the width is kind of getting cramped. So you can see where the generator is kind of hugging the inner fender panel. This is a kind of a rare air cleaner. Because the engine was so far back, and here's the carburetor right here, they couldn't use a Cobra type or a Shelby Mustang type air cleaner because it would have hit the firewall. So this air cleaner was utilized, and collectors of Tigers now have a hard time finding those. These cars have really terrible rust problems. There's a cross member that runs halfway through the car, and the exhaust pipes go originally through that cross member. There's a hole for dual exhaust, and exhaust pipes go through, and that area is kind of thin, and between the heat from the exhaust pipe, water, road salt, whatever, that cross member rotted out. And if that cross member is rotted out, you probably don't want to restore that car. It's a really, really complicated repair job. These were 4 lug wheel cars, and it was really a kind of an awkward car because the front track was significantly wider than the back track. The back axle was, say, this wide, and the front axle was that wide. So if you see one of these cars down on the road and they have the same size wheels front and back, it kind of looks weird, like, wow, it's narrow in the back and wide in the front. So what people do sometimes if they're modifying them is put wider wheels in the back and it fills it in, and it looks the part. These are cars we don't come across too often because they're either fixed up really nice and they're in the garage of a collector, or they're rotted to the bone, which is most often the case, because these cars weren't built to be collector cars. They were built to be bought cheap, have a lot of fun with them, put them away wet, and someday it gets junked. So to find them is rare. We haven't found too many on Barn Find Hunter. So to find 3 in a row here, you know, is kind of a neat treat for us. Let me tell you, upstairs it's not easy to get to. All right, here we go. All right, so just watch it here. There's no railing. So now we're upstairs on a loft, kind of a storage loft. I don't think you want to park a Cadillac up here, but for small sports cars, it works just fine. This is a bug-eyed Sprite, Austin Healey Sprite, built in the late 50s, early 60s, and it was such a pure sports car. I mean, you really can't see the front end there. Maybe we can lift that fender off afterwards and show you what the front end looks like. Those headlights stick up like little bug eyes. They were originally supposed to be flipped. The car would be more aerodynamic. They would flip, and then when you turn them on, they would flip up again. But they decided that was going to make the price point for the car, too expensive. So they welded them in place like that. I think the car was about a $1,998 car, somewhere in that area when new. Now here's a couple of cars that I'm really keen on. I'm a Lotus freak, and Lotus was a cool company started by a guy named Colin Chapman, who was totally obsessed with lightness. His thing was to add lightness, make a car as light as it could be. When he built a race car, now his cars won with Jimmy Clark at the Indianapolis 500. He won Formula One World Championships. I heard a story once where Colin was walking through the cars, lined up 33 cars at the Indianapolis 500, and this pomp and circumstance and parade going on before the Indy 500, and he walks over, he sees a lock washer behind one of the suspension pieces, a lock washer. Mechanic, get over here. Take that lock washer off. I didn't build the lightest car in the field, so that lock washer could go along for a 500-mile ride. Take it off. That's how obsessed he was with weight. His feeling was a race car should fall apart at the finish line. If it was good beyond the finish line, it was built too strong, and that means too heavy. This is a Lotus Elan, an Elan 1600. This is a Series 1. And a Series 1, I don't think I can open this door, no. You can tell a Series 1 because it's got a dashboard that's a little bit different than a Series 2. That is a Series 3 coupe. So that's a Lotus Elan, 2 generations beyond this one. So this is a 64, that's probably a 67, 68, I'm guessing. But that's a fixed hardtop. That roof does not come off. Same basic motor. I think that car had a little more horsepower than this one did, probably 105 in this and probably 112 in that one. I did a road test for a magazine once on a Lotus Elan. I had never driven one before. I had to take my shoes off because my shoes wouldn't allow me to work the pedals. They were too wide. And I decided that it was not a car you got in, but it was a car you put on. This car became an extension of your body. You got in and you didn't think about steering, it just steered. You just worked things as if it was a kind of an extension of your arms and legs. Really an amazing experience. The steering is so light, the car handles so well, that I said in this story for a magazine, it was the best sports car I'd ever driven. Close of today is day number 1 with this Pantera. Day number 2, you're gonna see a lot from these 2 guys, David and Brian. What are you gonna do to this thing?
We're gonna make it make noise.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I think so. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through kind of all the things you would go through, like check the ignition, go through for some compression, obviously make sure it rolls over, all those types of things, and fuel, and give us a good standpoint to say, okay, what can we swap around, change, put fresh on, and then fire it up.
Yeah, very cool. And what are you gonna do?
Whatever I'm asked to do. Yeah, I'll help out any way I can.
He's gonna do the work.
And you're sitting back?
Yeah.